Hi there, and thank you so much for joining me on this third session of getting you and your business. Oh, looks like Facebook is restarting us. I will start again. So, thank you for joining me, and welcome to this third session of getting you and your business ready to work with corporates. I'm Carol Devaney, and this is part three of a six-part series on really going over some of the basics of what do you need to know about corporates in order to work with them, where does your business need to be, and we'll cover a little bit next week on the future sessions on where does your headspace need to be to work with corporates. So tonight what I'm going to talk about is how do corporates buy, because this is really a key part of you being able to get started is understanding how they buy, because then you can figure out what ways you want to engage with them. I can see there's a few people on and some people saying hello. Hi Sophie, so say hello if you're on, and lovely to see you all here. So the three things that I'm going to cover tonight are proposals, bids and tenders, and supplier programs. Those are the three things I'm going to tell you about and how corporates buy. So it's a little bit different at times on how they buy products and how they buy services. So I'm going to talk first about how they buy products for resale and retail. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean is you make a fantastic product. They are a retail organisation, so they're a big corporate, John Lewis, Marks and Spencers, whatever, and they look at your product and think, we want to sell that to our people. So we want people to walk into our store, see that on our shelves and go, oh, that is fabulous. Give me that. Take it to the checkout and go. So that's a retail transaction. So if they are a retail organisation, so a retail corporate, then they will have teams of buyers who buy those products from you in order to sell on in their stores. And the way you want to sell those products is by engaging with buyers. And there's a number of ways you'll do that. It could be trade shows, could be getting appointments with buyers, could be getting your product into their hands, getting out there. So that is essentially how products will be bought. Those are products for retail. Slightly different if they're buying products to do other things with, and we'll talk a little bit about them in a second. Hello everyone. Oh, I've seen loads of people out of Canada representing, and just off of a call with people from Canada earlier. This has been a very Canada day. I'm also writing a bid for Canada today. Lovely to see so many people on. Thank you so much for joining. I hope this is really useful for you. And I'll take questions at the end as well. Okay, the other way that you might sell if you're selling services or products which are being bought for use within the corporate. So a product that they might buy for use inside the corporate could be, if I think of a large organisation and they decide they want to buy 5,000 toasters. Thank you, Jamie, for enjoying my new glasses. They are a bit out there, and I've gone with them. New hair, new energy, new glasses. Yeah, it's definitely that kind of phase in my life at the moment. So what was I saying? Oh yeah, so if they are buying products for use in their premises, they've got lots and lots of centres, as in offices or shops, and they want to buy a new kettle and a new toaster for every store, then they're going to buy that in much the same way I'm going to be talking about services. If they are buying a product that they are going to add to something and do something with, so they're going to adjust it, it's going to be part of their manufacturing process, then they will either buy it the way I talked about, having buyers that buy for retail, or they will buy it in one of these methodologies I'm about to talk about for services. So hopefully that's clear. If it's not, come back to me. Products do have different entry points, so it can be a little bit more complex, and I try and cover that as much as I can. Let me now talk about services and the products that are bought in this same way. I'm loving the compliments, people, about the hair and the fabulousness. Thank you very much. I'm actually quite casual today, but the hair is quite fabulous, I feel. That's the work of my hairdresser, not me. I just grew it. She did the work. Um, so, what I'm going to talk about is the different ways that you can... I'm going to start again. What I'm going to talk about are the different ways that corporates buy, so that you can understand how that you might sell to them, because that's really what you want to understand, is how you want to fit into that. And some of that will depend about where you are in your business. And when I mean where you are, I do not mean whereabouts geographically you're located. I mean where you are in your journey and working with corporates, and the stability of your business and the scale that you work on. And some of it will be around how confident you feel about working with corporates yet. So if corporates are going to buy small amounts, so let's say sort of up to 10, 20,000, and it can be slightly different if they have got government funding, they've got some different rules, but let's talk about small contracts under sort of 10 to 20,000, and this will apply to pounds and Canadian dollars, US dollars. Not that huge a difference in our currency at the moment, which pains some of us who trade in different countries, because we have to be all over the old exchange rates at the moment. It's all a little bit fluid. But around about 10 to 20,000 Canadian dollars or pounds, you can quite often get a sale direct from a corporate on these. So quite often what they will do is they will know what they want to buy. They will approach people who are on their supplier lists. So that's people who've worked with them before and they've kept their details, or who've applied to work with them. And they will also approach people they know. So we've got clients who, for that amount of money, will phone us up and say, we've got a piece of work, they call it low value. Let's face it, we're all small businesses, so 20,000 is not low value to us, but it's low value to them. They'll phone up and say, we've got like 15 grand of work, 20 grand of work, something like that. Can you just put a proposal together for us? This is what we want it to be. This is how much we're looking to spend. And that's what you'll do. So for small amounts of work, what you'll find is that either they will approach you for those proposals, or you can also be sending those proposals to people. So you might be reaching out and creating relationships with people and talking to them about what you have to offer. And a nice thing to say is sometimes, would it be okay if I sent you a proposal on that? Because that gives you the opportunity to put yourself in front of them. So they might be like, yeah, send me it over. I'm not looking to buy at the moment. But guess what? It's really busy in corporate. And when suddenly you go, oh, I was going to buy that service. I suddenly need it. Oh yeah, I've got the proposal right there. Let me just open that up. Have a look at what's involved. Have a look at the price. Okay, phone them up. Get them in. Get the work done. So that can be a really nice way. You can send out cold proposals, but the reality is that not a lot of people are going to read them. Like if you've got a super niche thing and you solve a problem exactly, you might get someone to open it. But really you want to be sending these proposals to people you've developed some sort of rapport with, or you've agreed you can send them the proposal, or they're an existing or a new client who are like, yep, send me over a proposal, I'll have a look at it. So those are your kind of small value items, and a lot of people will buy. For a lot of small businesses, you know, if you get 5 of those contracts in a year, that's 100k. You know, that's between 50 and 100k. So for a lot of people, that's a good amount of money to be coming in. You might actually think, my confidence level is such that I don't want to be trading at a higher volume than selling 10 to 20,000 at one time. And with lots of small businesses that I've worked with that are moving into working with corporate, that feels like a big jump in one transaction to them. So they're quite happy actually to work in that space until they get really comfortable signing the contracts, delivering the work, sending the invoices. Please send your invoices, folks. Like, that's the only way you get paid. Getting the money and then doing the next one. So that is a completely solid entry point for you to go into working with corporates, is to do it in that way. Now, what I would also say is, if you think they're not really talking about asking for my proposals and I'm not quite sure of my pricing yet, you're still doing some pricing, you can send what I would call a brochure or a leaflet instead. So essentially a little bit of a précis, an explanation of what you do. Remember, if you're following other videos that I do, always relate it to one area of their business. Like, what does this do for their business? You know, you can't just talk about the personal transformations that you would with consumers. You have to link it to why this is good for their business. And if you get a bit stuck in that, if you think, well, I just know why it's good for individuals, use what I call the 5 whys methodology. I call it that because that's what it's called actually. Really good methodology. You keep asking yourself why 5 times. So why does it give that transformation? Why is that good? Why is that good for the business? Why is that good for the business? Keep on at that until you get to okay, this is the golden nugget of what it really does for their business. So make sure that's in your brochures, because if you want to start sending those brochures out, you can get those out to people. If you just think, I'm not quite ready to go full on proposal, because for some people, the proposal and putting your price on it feels a little bit like, you know, sort of running naked down the high street, which I haven't done, and I don't recommend or disrecommend it. It's a personal choice, really, isn't it? I think it's probably illegal, so maybe I shouldn't recommend it. But for some people, it feels like that equivalent, where they're like, I just cannot send out my proposal with prices on it. Like, I'm not in that stage. That's fine. Send out your leaflets, send out your brochures, get people interested, because once you start to see that level of interest, it will raise your confidence level on your pricing. So that's what you want to do with small proposals. The next thing up is bids and tenders. So here is basically how you're going to win the bigger volume of work. So higher pricing and bigger volumes of work. Bids and tenders are essentially the same thing. What will happen is organisations, so government and private, corporate and third sector, so that's voluntary funded, so charities, NGOs, which is non-government organisations, all of these groups will put out to the market, and you are the market, market's just the supply chain, they will put out requests for proposals, and you'll sometimes see it badged as that. It will say RFP, you'll sometimes see RFQ, which is a request for qualification, which is just qualifying your interest. All of these things are in the category of bids and tenders. And what they're essentially doing is coming to the marketplace of everyone that's interested in supplying to them and saying, here is the thing that we want to buy. I want you to submit why we should buy it from you and what your price is. Now, they might say that, and I'm actually working on a bid just now which says that in about 104 pages, because there's lots of detail on it. It's a government organisation, so there's 50 pages of bump that they've had to put in there. But actually, the scope that they are putting out, so the thing they're asking us to bid on, is 3 pages long. So I can skim through a lot of the other stuff. We get some advice on some of those other pages, but the scope is what you're going to be looking for every time. And sometimes you'll see a tender or a bid come out and it will be 2 or 3 pages. And then maybe some additional documentation that's been shared. But what you're always looking for is, what's the scope of what they're asking for? So what are they looking to buy, and what must it do, or what must I do? Now, it can be complicated, it can be vague, or it can be absolutely crystal clear. It completely depends on the client. You usually have an opportunity to ask some clarification questions like, what does that mean? Remember that these aren't always perfect documents. So if you read it and you think, that sounds conflicting, like what they say on page 1 isn't what they say on page 5. Remember that people are under huge time pressure sometimes when they're preparing these documents, so things aren't always perfect. They'll be compliant generally, but they might not always be perfect. So if you think that doesn't make sense, just submit a clarification question. Because what you're going to be doing at this stage, if you want to be in the TIDs and tenders and bids world, is you're going to be looking at the companies you want to work with and seeing what they're putting into the marketplace and looking for the ones that you want to bid on. Now, you're going to have to fill in the tender documentation. You might do that yourself. I know a number of people in this group have been doing that and asking some clarification questions in the group. And where I'm not conflicted, I'm always happy to answer those questions as much as I can. And you know, sometimes I'd need to read the whole tender to answer a specific question, but general questions I can generally give you some quite good advice on. This has been my world a long time. But what you're going to be doing is writing the answers to those questions and submitting your bid. So when they come out to the world and say, hey, we are, you know, large corporation incorporated, we're looking for a whole panel of new coaches, we want 20 new coaching firms, everyone submit their tender, you're going to put in your best tender that you can. So you're going to put in the answers to all the questions, all the reasons that they should choose you. I'm going to tell you one tip never ever to do in a tender. Do not promote yourself by criticising the competition. Like on black and white and paper, it never looks good. I've seen it in some big tenders and you just sort of go, oh no, that's really uncomfortable. So do not put other people down to push yourself up. Like it's a metaphor for life as well, but it's not good in tendering. All that you're doing, because you won't score any points for that basically, but what you're doing is promoting yourself. So what's great about you, and in these bids and tender documents, this is where you almost have to like step outside yourself and look over and see all the awesomeness in yourself and write that down. There's no place for humility. No one goes, actually that person's probably amazing, but what they've said is they're mediocre, they're kind of mid-range. We'll give them points for humility. This is where you need to really big yourself up. And I find that for certain groups of people, especially if they're traditionally underrepresented in corporates, this is the bit that where if you really focus on that, you can change your success rate, because people who traditionally do really, really well are people who always did well in corporate anyway. So as employees, as suppliers. So anyone who's underrepresented, sometimes we've been conditioned to kind of play down some of what we do, be nice, play along. Tenders are not the place to do that. It is your place to sell yourself completely. So that's some of my advice when you're doing tenders and bids. Now, how are you going to know that they're out there? Well, once you've worked with a company, really easy, because you're going to be on their list and they'll usually notify you. Also, you're going to develop relationships with both the people who do the buy-in and the people who use the service, because what you want is when they're putting out their next tender, them to remember either that you won the last one or that you were on the list. So remember that not winning a tender isn't always a rejection of what you've done or who you are. It might just be that you weren't successful on various categories, and I'll talk a little bit about the end about why that might be. But they will remember that you were on the bid, so they might ask you, oh, can you submit on this one? So once you kind of get into that, that's how some of it will happen. How do you get in the first place? A couple of different ways. So if you want to work with the public sector, so that's anyone that is government funded, those lists are published. So if you're in my Facebook group, you can search for them. I usually post it every now and then. I think I'm going to take to posting it in the group every month so that people see those links. So if you're in Scotland, England or Wales, there are procurement lists that are published with all the work that government is putting out, and it is really easy to be on those lists and find that work that's published. And there's loads of, there is from the obscure to the random to the what you would expect on those lists. So you want to be signed up to those emails. Don't have them going into your inbox, because there's a lot of work gets put out. You want to have it in set up your email rules so that it goes to a folder somewhere, and then just sit down and look at them on a certain time frame. Also, don't subscribe to every single tender that comes out. Make sure you choose categories that apply to you. You probably start by choosing quite a lot of categories, and then you realise all those bids that are coming out aren't relevant to me, so you can switch off that category. Like, it takes a bit of work to be personal to your business. You can actually pay people to do this for you. If you've got the budget, you can go to someone and say, these are the kind of bids that I want filtered into me, and they'll actually even help you write the bid work. I don't pay for that service. I actually do it for some people, but I don't pay for that service, but you can do it, and there are some people that do a really good service doing that. So check those links for the public ones. Private sector is a little bit different. They will either post them on a website or a portal that they have published, or they will have a supplier list that they notify whenever they put a tender and bid out. And if you want to work with specific companies, that's the list you want to be on. So you want to get yourself onto that list, and I'm going to tell you shortly how you can get onto some of those lists. Let me just have a brief drink of water. It's been a very talkative day for me, so I'm getting a bit thirsty now. So you want to get onto some of those lists, and then again you want to do the same thing. See what's coming out, see if you want to apply for it, see if you can do it, and submit your bid. You'll find that in the beginning it takes quite a lot of time, because you're starting maybe from scratch, you're starting from a blank piece of paper. But what you'll find is the more often you've done them, the more material you've got to work with. So as you're offering the same service to different companies, you'll find that the reasons that you explain it and the wording that you put together, and if you create any graphics, you'll start to reuse them. So you tailor it a little bit for each bid, but quite often you're reusing it. We're actually working with a company just now who've asked us to be part of their bid. It's a very short time frame to get it written, but what we're finding is that because it's very similar to work we've bid for before, we're reusing a lot of the same material. So it's a little bit more of an edit than a write from scratch. If I go back 3 years in my business, I got a phone call last Friday saying, can you be in this bid? It has to be in next Friday. Now that's a very short time frame. We quite often have, we have between a month and a year actually to submit some bids. if they had phoned me 3 years ago, I would have said there's no way I can turn that around in a week. Like, I just wouldn't have had the material to write. I wouldn't have had just been able to do it. Because we're further on our journey, we can easily pull together examples of what we've done before and also written materials. So that's partly what I mean about as you go through your business. It's not necessarily that you get any better, it's just that as time passes, you've got more content available to rely on, so you can actually do more bids because it's easier and quicker to do them. So you want to think a bit carefully about what ones you're submitting on. So once you put in your bid, what will happen is they will assess everyone's bid, and then sometimes what will happen is they will award contracts to a lot of people, and then sometimes what will happen is one person wins, or two people win, or three people, or organisations. Now, what you'll find is, I don't want to make this too complicated, but what you'll find is that different people have different criteria for selecting a winner. So sometimes in the bid it will tell you what that criteria is, and sometimes it won't. So you won't always know. So if you're bidding for government work, it will pretty much always tell you. So the one we're bidding on just now, for example, which is an overseas government, it's not UK government, actually specifically says on it that the lowest bidder is not guaranteed the contract. So they have a very high rating on quality, which means that the lowest price won't necessarily win. Other things that you'll go into will make it really clear, lowest price wins. And I don't always want to be the lowest priced person to win a bid. It depends on the nature of the work. So it really depends on what they are looking for as a client. And like I say, sometimes they'll tell you that in the bid, and sometimes they won't. And the reason I tell you some of that is, if you don't win, it is genuinely not personal. Like if you lose a bid, you will sometimes be able to go to a panel meeting where they will actually invite losing bidders to a discussion. Now, what you won't get to do at that discussion is debate the outcome. So you can't be like, we should have won, we were better, we were cheaper. Like that's not what you do. There are legal courses you can take, legal recourses you can take if you think you should have won and you were done out of it in some legal way. So you can bid, you can propose, you can basically sue them. That's what I'm trying to say. It's not a great place to be, and none of us are really going to be doing that. This is for like multi-million pound ones that people do that. But what you can do if they offer it is you can be invited to a bid discussion where they'll tell you why you didn't win. And you have to like really go into that. I mean, it's never great. Like no one wants to go in and hear that discussion, do they? Like, you didn't win, here's why. But these are hugely useful, and we counsel clients to say, think of this as free consulting. Think about the fact that if you asked us to look at your bid and say why we think you didn't win, you'd have to pay us. And you'd have to pay us quite a lot of money to assess a bid and tell you why we think you didn't win and how you can make it better. This is a company who you genuinely bid to, giving you their free advice, basically saying this is why you didn't win, and that'll help you improve on the next time. What I also want to just be really clear is that it's also not personal, because they are not making any assessment on the value that you have bid as how they value you. So they're not looking at that going, oh, that person's not worth that money. They're just looking at it through a commercial assessment that they've predetermined before they even knew that you were going to bid, before they even saw your bid, and your tender, your financial transaction just didn't match up against their criteria. You might have been too low, you might have been too high, but none of it is personal and none of it is related to your self-worth. There will be a market rate for what you do. There will be a rate that company is prepared to pay for what you do, and none of that is about you personally. So please don't ever think that if you don't win, that it's in any sort of way personal. It really, really isn't. So, talked a little bit about proposals and a little bit about bids and tenders. But if you're not sure where to find those, that's what I'm going to talk about now. A little bit about some frameworks and how to get onto those supplier programs. So there are a number of large companies who actually offer specific help, and they are quite often called things like supplier diversity programs, diversity and inclusion programs for suppliers, those kind of names. Now, the reason they're doing that is because, and you've heard me go on about this lots and lots of times, is that lots of large corporates want to work with small businesses. What they've started to see is that small businesses aren't really getting in to work with them. So they're maybe not submitting tenders, or they're submitting tenders that don't win, or they're not putting forward proposals, or they can just see that there is a huge gap in the middle between them having an appetite to work with small businesses and small businesses looking to work with them. So they started to look at, well, how can we actually help and change that? And they've created some of these supplier diversity programs. Now, another reason they've done that is they recognise that the people who are really successful at working with them are the people who are traditionally included anyway. So people who are underrepresented in the workforce tend to be even more underrepresented or equally underrepresented in the supply chain. So they have created supplier diversity programs, and some of the huge organisations that you'll have heard of, so people like Facebook, who are now kind of called Meta, and Google, they have supplier diversity programs. You can apply to be part of them. They will teach you about how to work with them. They will help you get on their lists so that when things are put out to tender, they're notified. They'll show you how to set up your notifications so that you don't get bombarded with everything. So you're not looking going, I don't really have £1 billion product to sell you, but well, actually I do have a £20,000 product to sell you. And when I say product, that could also be a service. So you can get onto those. You can get onto those supplier diversity programs, and they will actually help you with that. The other thing that you can do is go on and have a look on suppliers' websites. Now they kind of bury these things a little bit hard to find. I was recording a podcast with someone this week, and she was saying, well, where would people find like how to go on these lists? I'm like, well, you go onto the website. You don't look at the middle page, you look above the line or below the line, you go into About Us or Corporate Social Responsibility or Work With Us or the Sustainability Policy, and somewhere in there will be a link to get on their supplier list. And she was laughing, she's like, how do people know to look for these things? Like, yeah, I guess they don't. But now you do. So that's where you can go and have a look for those as well. If there's particular places that you're struggling to find, you can always put a question in the Facebook group as well. And if I know how you get on their list, then obviously I'll share that with you. There's plenty of room for all of us, plenty of room to collaborate here and share information. That's what we're here to do. So those are the things that I wanted to cover with you tonight. You can get to corporates by sending them proposals or having discussions to open up them asking you for proposals by putting your materials out there into the world. You can get onto lists so that you can see what the bids and tenders are that have been out there, and you can start to bid and submit on those and win some lovely corporate work. And you can also go into supplier development programs to be trained in actually how to work with them. And they will obviously train you in their particular methodology and their contracts and whatever their way of working is. You can also go onto frameworks. What I'm going to say is that frameworks is probably not something you're going to try and do at the beginning of your journey. So being on a framework basically means that you're an approved supplier for that corporate. So when you bid for a framework, you usually bid to do a certain amount of work over a certain amount of time. So you might bid for a year's worth of work or 5 years worth of work, and you offer a price at that. You basically get something called pre-qualified, so you provide a lot of information to show what services you offer, what products you offer, and what your quality standards are, how you deliver it, and previous case studies that show who else you've worked with. And then when you get onto that framework, you get awarded it, and there might be maybe 6 or 10 or 20 of you on the framework, and you'll be the only people that organisation will give that work to over whatever course of the framework is. It is great to be on frameworks. It's great to be able to tell other clients. A framework, I always say, it's not always worth the paper it's written on, because if they don't award any work to anyone, no one makes any money. But if they put work out of that nature, you will always get it. Bidding on a framework is quite a lot of work, so it's something that I would say, if you're at an early stage, it's not something you want to look at doing on your own. You maybe want to partner up with other people, or you want to think about maybe doing that a bit later. Like, you want to have a bit of confidence in the corporate world about your own performance as a business, not you as a person, before you actually start bidding on frameworks. But it is a good thing to look at in the future. But really for now, if you're at the beginning and this is all about getting ready and getting started this course, you want to look at the proposal methodology where they directly award you the work, or bidding for work against others and hoping to win it. So that's everything that I wanted to cover tonight. I'm going to have a little look at the questions and just see what people are asking. So Costa is asking, how deep is your why? Oh, that's a really good question. Yeah, go as deep as you need to. It depends on the person, doesn't it? So I'm kind of fickle. I'm pretty fussy about the work that I do. I have to say, like the work I do is hard in corporate. It's not easy work. It's well paid work. It's rewarding, but the work sometimes is hard. So that's why I do the work I really care about, like the things that I'm really motivated to do because they matter to me. So they're the things that I'm like, yeah, this actually leaves the world a bit of a better place than we found it if we do this work. That matters to me. I work with one client just because I love working with them. Like if my phone rings and it's them on the phone, I'm always happy to work with them. Like they're good people doing difficult work under difficult circumstances, but they're a really good client. They're really good people. They're good fun. Yes, the work is difficult, but I just love working with them. So some of my whys are deeper than others, but for me, I am pretty choosy about. I don't do work that I don't want to do. That's the reality. Um, so let me just have a look at other questions. Liz is asking, how is the new house? The new house is lovely. It is warm. It is cosy. It's not completely finished because it has been a busy few weeks. Losing broadband for a week was a bit of a killer, I have to say, work-wise. And now we've got this sort of, we've got an emergency job on from a client who phoned and said, can you help? And we said, yes. And we've got this bid that we weren't expecting to write. So things are pretty stretched. So the house has had to take a bit of a back seat. But it is fine because it is a house and it will come together in time. And I've got my new painting over here, back to front. Here, which is called Abundance by my friend Gillian Park, who's an artist. And I love that painting. So new house, new painting. Let me just see what other questions are. Will corporates compare prices and go for the cheapest? Yeah, so I think I covered that. Sometimes they will go for the cheapest, and sometimes they won't. They'll go for quality. Sometimes it'll be other things. It might be safety. If you're bidding for financial services, it might be your compliance is better than everyone else's. It can really differ, and that's why I always say to people, like, do not take it personally, because it can be all sorts of random things. And I'll tell you something else. I've obviously assessed a lot of bids that have come in over the years when I worked in corporate, and we have had to give a bid. So we've had to give a contract to someone who won a bid on more than one occasion where they are not the bidder that we wanted. So we've assessed like all the bids that have come in and been like, they are great, that's who we want. But when you do the actual matching of the criteria, sometimes you're like, oh, we got the criteria off because we have to give it to these people, and really we want to give it to these people. And you know, you're in a legal process at that point. There's nothing you can do. So sometimes as the client, you're actually awarding it to the company you don't want to give it with because of the way you set your own criteria up. So you learn for the next time, and sometimes you will actually, you will learn a sore lesson because you think, oh, everything we did there, put that towards price, and we now got the cheapest, and we know they're not the best, and we also know it will be problematic working with them. So it really, like, people think it's an exact science. Sometimes it isn't, but I would say, like, you put the best bid in that you can every time, and you offer it at a price that you are really happy to work with, and that's the best you can do. Like, once it's in, you kind of have to let it go. And you'll hear me talking a lot about, like, you need to have a pipeline. Like, what you don't want to do is go, I'm putting in this bid, I hope we're going to win it, I'm going to wait till I find out, oh, we didn't win that one, start the process again. Like, you should always be bidding on more work, whether it's proposals or tenders. Always be bidding on more work than you can get. The problem you want to create is you think, oh, if I win all of that work, we can't possibly deliver it, because you're not going to win all of it. And even if you win lots of it, the time frames are going to move. The time frames always move a little bit. It's a better problem to think, I've now won more work and I need to bring in people to deliver it, than be sitting with weeks on end thinking, I have got nothing flowing through this pipeline. Like, you always want to be bidding for more than you can, and you put those great bids in, and you let the outcome go a little bit, even though sometimes you're like, I really want that one. Like the one we're working on now, I'm just like, oh my goodness, like, if we win that, I will be so excited, because it's work I really want to do. It's a client I really want to get. But as soon as that bid goes in on Friday, I'm letting go of the outcome, because I no longer have any control over it. All I can do is my best until Friday. And I want you to get into that space where you just submit and be a bit like Elsa in Frozen. Let it go, because it's no longer about you at that point. Sarah Jane, I hope I've answered your question about where corporates advertise. If there's any in particular you want to know, let me know. I've answered your question on early procurement. Yeah, great. If you see contracts you can look at, go for it. Absolutely go for it. And most local authorities and regional governments and things like that, big government organisations, they'll put on different like meet the buyer days with loads of helpful information. Like turn up at those, ask questions. Never think you're asking a daft question because someone will either have asked it before or someone else will be thinking, thank goodness Sarah Jane asked that because I wanted to know. So genuinely go to those meet the buyer sessions and ask loads of questions. Find out, how did I get on the list? Tell them, if you hear them talking about services that you think they haven't mentioned what I offer, it might be they've not thought of buying that before. So let them know, hey, the thing that I offer is. Now let me see. Sophie had mentioned earlier on. Let's go up here. Sophie, let me find your comment. Why can't I find Sophie's comment? Oh, maybe because Sophie's left. I couldn't find Sophie's comment. But anyway, you want to go in and say, here's what I offer. Do you know anyone that's interested in buying it if you're at the Meet the Buyer event? Because it might be that someone goes, oh yeah, actually I do know what I would want to buy. I do know that I would want to buy that from you. Sophie, I was looking to see. I thought you put in a post earlier that said about what you buy, what you offer, and I was just going to use it as an example. But it seems to have disappeared. Oh, you deleted it? Oh, sorry. See, I was coming back to you. I could see I've got good peripheral vision. I saw that. I just had to get through my content before I come back to it. But yeah, if you don't hear them talking about what you offer, then make sure they know why they should be buying it. So Sarah Jane is really surprised with the amount of social work and psychology services. Phenomenal purchasing of things like that. Remember that we're talking about services that are on their knees in this country at the moment, absolutely on their knees, in terms of the amount of people they've got, how overstretched people are, how people have managed to scrape through a pandemic. People that just weren't at home waiting for it to pass. Really, really difficult. So you absolutely want to get yourself out there offering that, because as well as offering at a really high price point, you're actually also doing an act of service. These are organisations that need your help. You don't have to feel guilty or bad about the fact that you're making the money from it. You're taking the risk by not being an employee, but you're supplementing their employed workforce. So you definitely want to do that. So Sophie's a confidence coach, and she's currently doing talks about effective leadership through the lens of mental wellbeing. Yeah. So if you went to like a Meet the Buyer event and you thought, I've not heard anyone talk about that, that's your opportunity to kind of put that pitch out there and say, hey, if you're putting together your leadership programme for next year, have you thought about having someone in to do a talk about effective leadership through the lens of mental wellbeing, and then you put in some of the business benefits, because that might actually help you with employee retention, stress in the workplace, people feeling valued at work. And what I'll tell you is, if you work in any of the wellbeing services or anything that you offer, if it will help employee engagement, you want to go and look at something called Q12. So Google Q12 employee engagement. There are lots and lots of big corporates who basically survey their workforce every year to find out how people feel about their workplace. And what we know about employee engagement is that the metrics around employee engagement are a very good predictor of profits, retention, performance and safety. So you want to have a look at those Q12 questions and think, do any of those things, any of those questions relate to what I do? Because if you can tell an employer, hey, I actually help you help you perform well in employee engagement in this category, you can draw it back to that, and they speak that language. So you really want to get that out there. So Q12, it basically stands for 12 questions. There are lots of different ones. So there's Q12, there's Your Voice, there's Have Your Say, I think. So there's lots of organisations. My favourite is Q12 because it's run by Gallup, and Gallup are one of the biggest research organisations in the world. And what they do is they have surveyed so many people, and they have whittled it down to the 12 questions that if employees answer strongly agree to, so it's like a scoring system, 1 out of 5, if people answer 5, so strongly agree to these 12 questions, they are the best indicators of your employee engagement. And there's some in there that people are like, that's a bit of a weird question, like, do you have a best friend at work? People are like, that's not for us, like, we don't have a best friend at work. The statistics show that companies where people say, absolutely I have a best friend at work, are high performing, low safety risk, good retention of employees, high profitability, diverse and inclusive, all the metrics that make you a good company, they are the ones that answer closest to that 5 on Q12. So really good to go and have a look if you're in employee wellbeing or anything around welfare. Go and have a look. In fact, where is my book? So I'm just going to quickly grab this. Sorry, this is a unplanned bit off of camera, and this is the book. I can't get this quite right in the mirror. This is the book that is written about it. It's called 12 First Break All the Rules, was their original book, but this is the 12 the elements of great management, and it's about those 12 questions. So really, really good book, and if you're in that field, definitely read it. So let me just have a look. Sophie, you're saying people only want free talks. So you don't want to work with people that want free talks. If you're going to do free to break into a particular organisation, you do really, really bite-sized and really strategic. Corporates have money to spend, and they have money to spend on wellbeing because it's costing them billions a year in sick leave. So there is a business case for them to spend that cash. So yeah, you definitely want to push them back to doing that. So far they aren't looking at investing in their own employees' personal mental well-being. So that's interesting. It is an interesting balance. I know that when I worked in corporate, I sometimes felt some of the employee well-being stuff felt like a little bit intrusive. Like I felt like it's my responsibility and my private space to manage my well-being and welfare. But also I recognised that when I thought that, I was probably in quite a good place and quite healthy and good mental well-being. I've had members of my team with significant difficulties with mental well-being, and actually that's when they've really appreciated the support that the organisation can have for them. Smart organisations recognise that actually, you know, just sending everyone on resilience training is not enough. Like there was a while where people just sort of went for, well, we'll put everyone through resilience training, then we can work them to the extreme. A pandemic kind of threw that back on employers and made it clear that that's not working. Like people are resilient anyway. It doesn't mean you can work them at an exponential rate forever. So actually I do see some companies now starting to look at a much more personal and tailored investment in mental well-being. So just have more of a look around, I would say. Chip back away at the ones that are willing to invest in it. Like you're not there to work for free, because if you can improve their employees' mental well-being, you're improving their profitability, their staff retention, everything. So just look around for the companies that are investing in that. There are some companies that invest significantly in it, and that those are the people that you want to work with. So that is me for tonight. I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope you found it useful. Hope my diversion into Q12 wasn't too off track for you. But if you work in that field of wellbeing, definitely have a look at employee engagement stuff, because you can relate it really closely to it. But thank you for joining me. I am going to go now, and thank you very much. Good night.